Hello and welcome to South Asia Chat, a podcast brought to you by the Institute of South Asian Studies at the National University of Singapore. I am your host, Ramita Iyer. I work as a research analyst at the institute here. It is my great pleasure today to have with me Mr. Vinod Rai, Distinguished Visiting Research Fellow ISAS and former Comptroller and Auditor General of India. In this episode, he will be discussing India's politics, India's foreign policy, and issues of regionalism. Welcome to South Asia Chat, Mr. Rai.
Thank you, Ramita. Thank you for having me.
So this year, the Modi government completes 3 years of its second term and 8 years of continuous central governance. How would you assess the performance of the government over the last 8 years, and what do you think were some of the hits and misses?
Well, the Modi government has had a very roller coaster kind of a ride. And while in the beginning, they did start very well on a package of reforms in all sectors of the economy, things like that. But of course, they were very badly hit by the COVID pandemic which hit them. But I would largely say that the movement has been upward, though most of us in India would have loved to have the upward graph gradient to be much steeper than what it has been. But it must be said to the credit of the government that on the economic front, they have done relatively well, despite the fact that about 2 years was lost during the pandemic. Yes, inflation is becoming high now, but it has largely been under control. Now what happens largely is that when the economy is on the uptick, and there is, especially after we've had some kind of a pandemic kind of a situation, there is a lot of liquidity in the market. And that's when inflation kicks in. Not necessarily a bad sign as far as the economy is concerned, largely due to the fact that economic growth is being registered now. The good things about the Modi government has been that agricultural growth has been very good. One of the hits has been that infrastructure, whether it be power generation or in road construction, has also done exceedingly well. And people would also like to believe on the political front that the abrogation of Article 370, as far as the larger part of the country is concerned, they see it as a sign of the fact that there will be greater integration of the J&K area to the rest of India, because that part of the article in the constitution was only for a very short time. But the fact that it was allowed to stay, people felt was unduly over a large period of time. And it now seems that issues are settling down, though some of the political parties in the valley have not accepted the abrogation. But larger parts of the valley of Jammu and the valley seem to have settled down, and they are doing well about it. Now, there have been some other issues regarding agricultural laws or farm laws. There have been issues around labor. One miss, as I would call it, is the fact that the government was on the path of reforms for farm laws. The laws that were introduced were decidedly good in the long-term development for farmers, but unfortunately, it was not perceived to have been as good as it was meant to be. And to the extent that probably the government tried to sell the reform package without adequate discussion about it, adequate discussion either in parliament or with the states and politically too. That's where it ran into some kind of headwinds. And that has not been good for the farmers or the country. On the other hand, we've had a set of reforms which are labor reforms. Now, labor reforms, the good thing about labor reforms is that about 16 to 19 states have already accepted those reforms. And this was a bottom-up kind of a development, where the states started the reform because it was acceptable to the state and the setup in the state, and it caught on among other states. The reform have been implemented, but these have been implemented by virtue of executive orders, not changes in statute. So it is being hoped that over a period of time, when the government is in a position to explain the benefits of these reforms better, when the government is in a position to discuss these over long periods of time in the parliament itself, so that parliamentarians can assess how good these have been, probably these can come kick back into the system. And we are hopeful that the reform agenda will be driven going forward. So on the whole, it has been a good performance, not the way most of the Indians would have liked to be it, but then you have to factor in 2 years lost due to the pandemic. But in the pandemic also, of course, in the beginning, there was some difficulties in dealing with it because of the harsh lockdown. But I must say that they have now been able to put their act together.
So you mentioned about India losing out over the last 2 years because of the pandemic. So we've seen that it has been a significant political factor since 2020. And the government has, in fact, received quite a bit of criticism for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Can you give us a sense of what has happened over the past year and how the government is placed today with respect to the pandemic and vaccination?
See, it's largely believed that when the pandemic hit the country in 2020, early parts of 2020, two things happened. The government did not believe that it was going to be, the scourge was going to be so severe. Number two, because they did not believe that it was going to be so severe and it would hit such a large number of people, they were not so well prepared for it. If you'll recall, why I'm saying they're not so well prepared for it is because if you'll recall, very early in the day, within 6 months of the pandemic hitting the country, Government of India already declared that the worst is behind us, and they had started exporting vaccines to friendly countries. Now, that was an indication of the fact that government had not been able to probably understand how severe it was going to be. So it was a wrong reading of the situation. As a consequence of that, the government ordered about a 9-week lockdown, which is very harsh. It hit poor people very badly. It created hardship in terms of livelihood. It created hardship in terms of health issues. The health infrastructure was not well prepared for it all. Now, so early 2020 till about September, October 2020, it was a very difficult struggle, and the government was all over the place trying to prepare the state government as well as the central government. It was only in the beginning of 2021 that the central government and the states seemed to have overcome the struggle and became with grips to the got grip on the entire problem. And whether it was oxygen, whether it was hospital beds, things started improving, and by that time government was in control of issues. That is where the biggest criticism against the government came about, in the fact that government had not been able to take control of the situation, which caused a lot of hardship. But when the government put its act together, and that was in middle of 2021, I think after that it has been an upward situation. Vaccination drive has been remarkably good, considering the fact that about 150 crore people have already been vaccinated as of now, and the number of people which are being vaccinated even in the age group of about 15 to 18 is very encouraging. So vaccination has been ramped up, and it appears that the third wave, which is largely the Omicron wave, the government is fairly well prepared because there has been no lockdown on one hand, and on the other, which means no loss of livelihoods. On the other side, as far as life and health issues are concerned, the hospital position and doctors on call position seems to be very good, and to that extent, the harshness of the problem has been taken care of. So I think with adequate precautions, the public has also become cautious about it. Things seem to be on the upward, and with the kind of cooperation that the public is providing to the government, I should think that the worst is behind the government, and now henceforth it will be easier to manage this kind of a pandemic.
Thank you so much for giving us an insight into what has happened over the last 8 years. But now I'd like to bring us to today and this year. So it's an important year for India. Over the next few months, state assembly elections are scheduled to be held across 5 states: Uttar Pradesh, Goa, Punjab, Manipur, and Uttarakhand. What are some of the significant political trends that you observe, and how do you think these results will affect center-state's relationship? But also, what impact do you think that these elections will have on the general elections that are scheduled to be held in 2024?
Well, yes, we are definitely in for very interesting times. This is the time when the vibrant democracy that India is, where the voter becomes important. His importance becomes so very paramount, and that's the time when the voter actually begins to flex what I would call his muscles, and all the parties start wooing him. See, one of the most important states in the country, or if not important in the sense of other issues, definitely in terms of the population, UP is going to polls. UP is very important for the fact that there are 403 legislative assembly seats. In 2017, the BJP government had romped home with about 312 seats that they had won. They obviously want to repeat their performance. They started with the kind of infrastructure projects that they have launched and completed. It must be said to the credit of the government in UP that they have done a lot of road projects. But they soon realized that infrastructure was not enough for them. So polarization around religion has started, and whether it is the Varanasi or it's Ayodhya, this is being projected in a large number of ways. Now, BJP, of course, is putting its act together, but I think the party which has really put its act together and is pushing hard is the Samajwadi Party, under the leadership of Akhilesh Yadav, who was one time chief minister. This party is attempting to polarize around two things. Its strong point was always the MY, as it was called, which means the Muslims and the Yadavs. But now they are trying to get some lower caste people also in their hegemony under the control, so that they will be able to get a larger number of seats from that faction. They had 47 seats in 2017, and it is expected that they will shore up their numbers fairly substantially, and this is the party which is really giving the BJP a fight. Then there is also the the Bahujan Samaj Party under Mayawati, which seems to be losing ground, and though it had 19 MLAs in the last assembly, it does not seem to be making a very determined effort in the elections for next month. The Congress is in a large number of ways losing ground, though of course they have launched a manifesto which they call a pink manifesto, because they seem to be appealing to the ladies segment of it. So UP is going to be very important. It is having a 7-phase election, and let us see how much the BJP is able to. It's largely believed that BJP will come to power, but with a substantially declined share of votes and seats. Punjab is another state which is going to elections. Punjab was very much in the news recently because the former chief minister, who is from the Congress party, was asked to step down. And a Dalit, as we call them in India, from the lower caste, has been made the chief minister. Usually, a Jat Sikh, as they are called, used to be in power all the time in Punjab. So for the first time, the Dalit has come, but Dalits do control about 32%. Dalit, the population share is about 32%. So it's going to be a vote which will try to see whether the Congress, with the combination of Jat Sikh, because its party president, Navjot Singh Sidhu, is a Jat Sikh, and the chief minister is a Dalit, so whether that combination is going to work for them. Congress has got fractured because of this. The party which is making inroads now is the Aam Aadmi Party, which had some kind of a presence there. They have announced a new chief ministerial face who seems to be popular, and they are making inroads, of course. But the USP of the Aam Aadmi Party has always been distribution of what I would call freebies. So they are in that game in a large number of ways. BJP is making inroads, but it has never had that kind of a strength in Punjab, largely also because it broke away from the Shiromani Akali Dal. The third state which is going to polls is Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand is going to be seeing a direct fight between the Congress and the BJP. The BJP, Uttarakhand has about 70 seats, if I remember correctly, out of which about 56 seats are already with the BJP. Congress has 11. So the BJP changed its chief minister about a year back. The young chief minister is very active and seems to be doing well. Aam Aadmi Party is trying to make some forays into Uttarakhand, but largely in the urban areas only. So they have not been able to make any progress in that. Manipur with 60 seats is also going to elections. Manipur is one of the border states, and to that extent is important. BJP had been able to cobble together a coalition of 29 of its own seats and about 35 total. This is largely in the plains area, which is called the Meiteis of Manipur, where the BJP has a fairly strong stranglehold, and it seems that they should be able to romp home. Goa is the fifth state which is going to election. Goa has only 40-member assembly, but we are going to have very interesting elections in Goa because it is going to be four-cornered. It's a BJP government as of today with 25 members in it. Aam Aadmi Party has come up in a big way. The TMC, Trinamool Congress led by Mamata Banerjee, has made very strong forays into Goa. The Congress is already there but is debilitated in strength and is losing some important members of its party. So it's going to be a four-cornered contest, but it will be an interesting contest. Now, you asked me what effect it will have in the elections of 2024. The first thing about the significance of these elections is its impact will be on the presidential election, which is due for July 2022, which means the President of India and the Electoral College comprises members of the Legislative Assembly of different states. So it is the attempt of all the parties to muster as many MLAs as they can. So that will be the first impact. Number two, the impact in 2024 will be very significant because UP is a populous state. It controls the largest number of members of parliament, which is 80. So indication that the BJP or any other party has a fairly good stranglehold in the assembly would be a pointer to what would be the significance of these seats in 2024. So we are going to have very interesting times, whether it's in UP or in Punjab, and this will in some ways be an indicator of how strong the BJP is going to emerge in the next election, or is it losing ground?
Shifting our focus now to India's international relations. So we've seen over the past few years, there has been an intensification of India-China rivalry. There have been tensions at the borders. The Indian government has banned several Chinese apps, including TikTok. And what we've seen is just a general growth of China's footprint in the subcontinent. At the same time, we've also seen that India has actively participated in multilateral groupings like the Quad, which has Australia, Japan, the United States, and India. So what is your take on the future of Indo-China relations, and do you see the Quad as an effective grouping to keep a check on China's rise?
See, China and India in the Asian region have always been kind of competing for dominance in some ways. And whenever either of the countries grows economically, they want to become more dominant. China certainly is economically more predominant today in Asia. To that extent, it is trying to assert its supremacy in a large number of ways. India and China share a fairly long border. It's a large number of ways. It's not a very well defined border. Hilly terrains, difficult to monitor on both the sides. But each country believes that it must gain more in terms of space in that region. So, going forward, these two countries will continue to jostle for supremacy in ways which will be economic, ways which will be military. As happens in foreign relations, every country tries to shore up its strength by fostering alliances or joining alliances. Now, Quad is one such alliance where some countries in the Indo-Pacific region are feeling threatened because of the muscle that China at times flexes. And that is why Australia, Japan, and India, with of course the USA joining in it, have formed the Quad. And they feel that their presence in the Indo-Pacific region in a large number of ways will, without their saying so in as many words, be some kind of deterrent to the growing strength of China in there. But the better effect of on the economic side of Quad has been that these countries, members of the Quad, have been sharing critical technologies. They have been sharing cyber security issues. They have been sharing climate control issues, and also have rendered military cooperation to each other. To that extent, I sincerely believe that with this collaboration on different fronts, it's not merely a military kind of an alliance that has been formed, because they are pooling resources even for infrastructure development. So to that extent, it seems to be a happy development for all the four countries, though it is largely being played out as jostling for regional security. So I think all the countries, India or China, want to play a larger role in the world security scenario, and this must be one of those wherein they are trying to push their own interests in the global affairs.
Finally, moving to our immediate neighborhood, we've not only seen China's rising influence, but also smaller countries playing a more active role on a regional level. For instance, Bhutan entered into a bilateral agreement with Bangladesh, while Bangladesh has extended loans to Sri Lanka and the Maldives. What are your thoughts on these changing dynamics, and how has India handled it so far? Do you think that India is going to continue being a dominant presence in the region, or is the new activity by these smaller countries going to alter the historical presence of India?
See, I would be very upbeat about this kind of a development. China and India, or India being a larger country, economically larger, militarily stronger, will continue to play a fairly dominant role. But why I said I'm upbeat about it is because it shows that any country which becomes economically strong does tend to spread its goodwill or its own development with other countries. To that extent, the fact that Bangladesh has given a large loan to Sri Lanka, which is more a currency swap arrangement, is a very happy development. It shows that Bangladesh today has been able to shore up its forex revenues. Their exports are doing very well. Economically, they are far better off than what they were even a decade back. And to that extent, they are willing to help a neighbor in the South Asia region. On the other hand, there are a large number of Bangladeshi, maybe about 70,000 of them, who are migrant workers in the Maldives area. And Bangladesh has agreed to provide a loan of roughly about 150 million, again a currency swap arrangement, to Maldives. So these are very happy developments, and it also goes to show that economic development of Bangladesh has been so good, and that they are willing to share the benefits of it with other countries. Now, India had also advanced a loan to Sri Lanka. The fallout of all this is that Sri Lanka had a huge debt towards China. And the fact, as was seen, that because they were not in a position to repay the debt completely, they had to have sign off some arrangements on the port of Sri Lanka also. So the attempt for these countries is to take loans from friendlier neighboring countries, and to that extent, I think Bangladesh advancing to Sri Lanka and Maldives is a very happy development. On the other hand, Bangladesh and Bhutan are regional neighbors in South Asia. They share a common border, and they have been members of SAARC as well as BIMSTEC. So they have signed a pact very recently to help each other in a large number of ways, largely economic, to the extent that mutual respect for each other. They will bring about infrastructure development. They will share the benefits of whatever economic advancement each of the countries does. And to that extent, I think whether it is encompassing hydropower or it is free trade and transport, I think these are in some ways on the front burner, and this is where they will try to help each other. So on the whole, these are good developments because it shows that these smaller countries who have now begun to economically develop fast are not at the mercy of the larger powers in that region. So to that extent, I think it's a very good thing. It will be good for the pride of the country, pride of its citizens, and economically, I think the terms between these neighboring countries will improve substantially.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts, providing a roadmap on different aspects of India's domestic and foreign politics. Thank you, Mr. Rai.
Thank you very much.
You were listening to South Asia Chat. As always, tune in every week to gain insights into the latest developments across the subcontinent. To learn more about our work, including our publications, book reviews, and events, you can visit us at isas.nus.edu.sg. You can also follow us on our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram.